Hi guys, it's Robert here, and today I want to talk to you about how you make decisions when it comes to buying hi-fi equipment. Now, there's a lot of options you have to get information, and personally there is four items that I put into the mix before I decide to buy any audio equipment. And I'm going to go through them, and I'll start with number four. That is the one that I pay least attention to. And number four in the mix is reviews. Now, you got to understand that the world of reviews is not really neutral, meaning a lot of these reviews come from magazines or online publications. These publications have advertisers, and the way it works very often is that brands will say, look, I'll buy ad space in your magazine, or I'll pay you to have my logo and my ad on your website. But as a customer of your advertising space, I want something in return. I'd like you to review some of my products a little more often. And of course, they're not going to give a one-star review. So there is a little bit of a conflict of interest whenever you read reviews. You got to keep that in mind. I'm not suggesting reviewers are always doing a bad job. I'm not suggesting they're always, bought and paid for. But even if they try to be as honest as possible, you can't really hide your bias if you're a reviewer and you're getting paid for it, even if it's indirectly. Just compare it to if you're the Financial Times, for instance, and Goldman Sachs has been an advertiser with your newspaper for hundreds of thousands of dollars each year for 10, 20 years, and then all of a sudden there's a bit of bad news about it and you want to publish a scandal. I can tell you, the moment that article is published, you've got Goldman Sachs on the phone saying, look, you either pull that article or we're going to pull our ads. You can't bath-mouth us in such a way and expect us to, keep advertising. Because obviously whenever a big corporation is criticized, they never disagree. They'll always say, the rumors are not true or whatever it is. So don't expect something different when it comes to news or reviews about audio equipment. A lot of people, reviewers, they try to make a living off of their YouTube channel, for instance. So they have sponsors. Their show is sponsored, and that's fine. There's nothing bad about that. I'm just trying to say it's not 100% neutral. You can't really rely on it. So that's why reviews is only number four on the list. Number three is an audition at your dealership. I've always found it puzzling because when you go to a dealer, what you're listening to is an entire system that you're usually not familiar with. Usually the room, the dimensions, the acoustic treatment is very good. So if you're put in that listening chair, and let's say you're in the market to buy new speakers, how do you know what the speakers are contributing to what you're hearing? Maybe you don't really like the sound that much, but it's actually not the speakers. Maybe you don't like the amplification that much. Maybe it's the DAC behind it that you don't really like that much. So you can't really isolate the one component that you're trying to audition. Now, let's say you're trying to audition maybe a DAC, and if your dealer can let you hear a comparison in the very same room, the same setup, he's just, let's say, swapping out a DAC, okay, that may have some value for comparative reasons. You can say, oh, this DAC sounds a little bit more like this DAC sounds a little bit more like that, and then you can choose whichever one you prefer. So you can get the difference between two components if he swaps them out. But that's usually not possible for big heavy amplifiers. Amplifiers need to warm up too, they need to settle a bit sometimes. Same goes for speakers. So that's why going to a dealership is only number 3 on my list, because here again, the story you'll hear from the dealer is not neutral either. The dealer chose to represent certain brands because he likes them. Hopefully that's the reason. You'll be amazed. There are also dealerships in business just because they think audio is a good business and they don't really have a heart for audio or music. And they're just like, hey, this was a new brand and profit margins are pretty good. They promise to do a lot of marketing, so people will look up where to buy this product. And, you know, I live in this, my shop is in this big area, you know, big city, whatever. So automatically people will call in and say, hey, you got this product. And that's why they carry the brand. So not to say that all dealers are like that. There are terrific dealers out there who really have a passion for music. But you'll always get a colored advice. They'll never say, if you're tied between 2 brands and one is the brand that you're listening there, let's say speakers, you're listening to Wilson Audio at a dealer and you say, yeah, I'm kind of tied between these Wilson Audios or these Focal speakers. And if that dealer doesn't carry Focal, don't expect the dealer to say, well, you know, to be honest, if you like transparency and clarity, the Focals might be a better choice for you. He'll never say that. He'll say, hey, these Wilson Audios, they're better for this, and this reason. It's normal. It's salesmanship. It's not a bad thing. I'm not putting down dealers. I'm just trying to make you aware of the dynamics of the conversation. What is behind it, you know? If I have a friend who works in banking, and on Monday morning he has a meeting, and one time this life insurance provider said, hey, for the whole month of May, you're getting twice as much commission, double commission. You know, it's a promotion month. Now, guess what? If you walk into the bank an hour after that meeting and say, hey, I'm looking for some life insurance, which life insurance brand or provider do you think you'll get recommended? That's how business works very often. And it's not per se a bad thing because, you know, for a large part, that's the way it works. But you need to be aware of it, that the advice you get, for instance, at the bank, you're talking to salespeople. So you're getting advice from a salesperson who is obviously trying to sell whatever they have in store. I myself, when it comes to financial advice, I pay by the hour. I go to a guy who's really knowledgeable about finances and about all the different products that are out there, and he has nothing to sell. He just sells his experience by the hour. He doesn't sell any products. So I know he's being completely neutral. Of course, you're still getting his opinion, but at least it's completely neutral advice. And because of his experience, this guy can also tell you the backdrop, like what's behind a certain product. And the same goes for audio. And that's why number 2 on my list, when I make a buying decision, is to get what I call independent advice. And believe it or not, you can get that, although you have to search. There's a guy on YouTube called Jay. His channel is Jay's Audio Lab. He went through well over 300 different amplifiers, and I don't know how many dozens of speakers in his own house, in his own listening room. And when you have that kind of experience, it's very valuable for me to talk to a person like that, because he has nothing to sell. He's not a salesman. He's just an audio enthusiast who's obsessed. And in my book, being obsessed is positive. Obsessed about trying new stuff and mixing and matching and discovering whatever's going to happen. So when you talk to a guy like that, and of course he charges. You know, he's not my friend. I live on the other side of the world. So I can't say, hey, let's have a beer and give me all the free advice I want. No, so you pay for that. Now, if you're in the market for a DAC or an amplifier that's $500 or $1,000, you may not want to do that. But especially if you're going for more high-end, I think it's a good choice to get consultation. Try to get independent advice. For instance, I just gave the example about Wilson Audio and Focal. Jay's experience was that with focals, they're a little bit easier to place around the room because they have a downward firing port for the bass. Now, my gear, my system is in the living room, and I didn't want to be too tied up to the positioning. I want the positioning to be a little bit more flexible. So that was a +1 for the focals, for instance. So, you know, some of this advice you can't get unless your dealer sells and Wilson Audio and Focal and whatever else you're considering. And that's very difficult. So yeah, try to seek out advice from people who've been there, done that. And sometimes if they're not your friend, you need to pay by the hour. And it's well worth it, especially if you are in this price range. Now, number one, the most important part of my buying decision, if possible, is the in-home demonstration. There is no replacement for getting a component, putting it in your own system, and listening to it for a while. Now, in my case, right now, I have the Griffin Essence monoblocks, and I was able to get an in-home demonstration for the stereo model, together with the preamplifier. It was the stereo model, but I was able to experience it. There is no replacement. Like I said, if you go to the dealer and listen, there is so many other factors. Like I said, the rest of the hi-fi system, the room, everything. And it also takes several listening sessions, many hours of listening before you really get a hang of what it sounds like. You typically cannot do that with a dealer. You know, nobody's going to sit for 3-4 hours at your dealership unless, you know, maybe some people do that, I don't know. But, you know, it's easier and more convenient, obviously, to do that at home in your own system and then let you buy the component. Now, of course, this is very difficult because not every brand is represented equally well all over the world. Not every dealer is willing to give you an in-home demonstration simply because sometimes they don't even have that particular component in stock, or they're simply not willing to do it. Components, especially speakers, and of course amplifiers, can get really big, really heavy, and unless you already have a really good relationship with your dealer, it can be difficult to get an in-home demonstration. But try to persist. At one time I was looking into Nordos cabling for this system, and there was a dealer here who said like, yeah, I've got the Nordos Valhalla in my showroom, come listen to it. And then I said, and that's number 3 I talked about just now, how am I going to know that what I'm hearing is, what part of it is the Nordos cabling? You know, how do I know it's not the speakers or the DAC or the amplification? It's so difficult to really pick that out if you're listening at the dealer. So I was persistent and I had to work a bit, but ultimately, yes, I did get an in-home demonstration. And there were plenty of really good reviews about this Nordos cabling. And once I got them in my own system, I thought, wow, judging from all the reviews, you know, this is going to be heaven. It's going to be Valhalla. Well, guess what? It sounded really good. It sounded a little different than the cables I already had, but it wasn't a huge improvement. It wasn't a huge improvement. And I'm pretty sure the only way for me to find out is by putting those cables in my own system, in my own house. This conclusion I could have never arrived at by going to a dealership with, I don't know, 5-6 components in the chain, one being the cabling, and then, you know, basing my conclusions. Maybe it sounds nice because the interconnects are Nordos Valhalla 2 and the power cords are Nordos Valhalla 2. So by simply getting only the speaker cables wouldn't give me the same experience. So that's why number 1 is the in-home demonstration. Not easy to get, but I really recommend you be persistent. Try to work with your dealer, maybe give a deposit or a security deposit, you know, so the dealer can feel safe leaving a component with you. It's really worth it, and especially if you're shopping in the higher price ranges, it could save you from, you know, making a wrong decision. So that is my 4 things that I do put in the mix before I buy audio components. Number 4, and the least important, is reviews, online reviews or in a magazine. Number 3, spot number 3, is the demo at the dealership, which may be nice for comparing components if the dealer can swap them out on the spot. Number 2 is the independent advisor that you may want to look out. I do recommend check out Jay. His channel is Jay's Audio Lab here on YouTube. Ton of value there. And on number 1, the most important component of making a buying decision is going for that in-home demonstration. So I hope that's valuable. I'm curious, how do you approach this? What do you try to do? What is your thinking? What is your rationale when it comes to buying new components? I'm really curious to find out. Take care.